This is Talk Business and Politics with Roby Brock.
And welcome to the program. I'm Roby Brock. We are glad that you've joined us. The economy is in a curious place right now. We knew the second quarter, basically April, May, and June, were going to be bad, and it was. A plethora of statistics point to major economic carnage. While July has been a rough month for COVID-19 numbers in Arkansas, school is on the horizon, and what's in store for the economy is a great big question mark. We bring in Mervin Jebaraj, economist with Walton College of Business. Mervin, let's begin with a snapshot of the U.S. economy. The first look at second quarter GDP came out last week. It was a staggering 32.9% decline on an annualized basis. Is it the consensus that this second quarter is going to be our worst of the year?
Yeah, so I think if you were to look for any silver lining in any of this report, was that we were fully expecting a horrible second quarter report, and we got a horrible second quarter report. So on a seasonally adjusted annualized basis is how the BEA does this. The economy did decline about 33%. To keep in mind here that since it's annualized, the BEA's calculation implies that if the economy the entire year was like the second quarter, then the entire year's economy would decline about 33%. So, on almost a slightly better measure that we're not traditionally using in this country because we don't have these wild swings from quarter to quarter, is to simply look at each quarter's change from the previous quarter. So in that particular metric, which we traditionally don't use, the GDP declined about 9.5% as opposed to the annualized figure, which was about 33%. So the 9.5% puts us about in line with most of the major Western economies, most of the major developed economies around the world. I guess the key difference, say for example in Germany, quarter to quarter, their economy declined about 10.5%, so slightly worse than us. But the key difference between, of course, Germany and the United States right now is that even though they might have traded about 1% worse in quarterly growth than we did, they've gotten far better control of the pandemic in their country, and therefore their third quarter and fourth quarter will obviously look a whole lot better than here in the United States, and obviously will cost the government a lot less in stimulus to keep their economy going than here in the United States, because they've gotten better control of the pandemic for the trade-off, which was a near 10% decline quarter to quarter in the economy.
So in Arkansas, we saw some rough jobs numbers in the last month. Nearly every sector showing some declines, particularly manufacturing and hospitality. Trade and transportation, one of the positive signs there. We also saw a decent state revenue report. It was boosted by a shift in those individual income tax revenue from April. I want you to address that. But sales tax was actually pretty steady. What's your analysis?
Yeah, so a big part of that boost in the July report was obviously the fact that the government had moved the state's income tax filing date to match the federal deadline change to July. So a lot of that stuff that you would have seen happen in April happened in July instead. So that is, sort of a one-off thing that we shouldn't really account for and count too hard. But there was some positives across the board when we looked at sales taxes for goods and services. And I think, again, that is in large part because Arkansas is a lower income state with a lower cost of living. So the $600 weekly boost in unemployment benefits, the $1,200 stimulus checks that went out, played a much more significant role in Arkansas than it would have in other states. And what we've seen is that spending, again, just looking at the national GDP figures and looking at consumption expenditure data that we have from credit card processors for Arkansas, we can see that people are spending more money at general merchandise stores, home improvement stores, those types of big box retailers than they would be at this time of the year. And that is largely because people are going out and spending the money that they've gotten. I think estimates suggest that people on unemployment benefits are spending about 73% of their, unemployment boost in the economy, specifically in this retail sector. So we're obviously the state's able to collect sales taxes and all of these things. It's certainly very fortuitous that Arkansas moved last year to impose online sales taxes, so we're able to collect taxes on that component of the economy as well, which would have would have been a huge loss to the state, especially during this pandemic when a lot more people are shopping online than traditionally would have. So I think the good news for the state, obviously, is that the stimulus that has happened so far, which we should remember as of now has been cut off, at least since the last week of July, definitely at the end of July, has helped boost spending in the state, specifically in certain retail sectors. That does not mean that even though the state made a lot more money overall in sales taxes from goods and services like that, they've certainly lost money in the restaurant and bar sector. So there are cities that will struggle as a result of this, and there are certainly A&P commissions that depend on leisure and hospitality taxes for their revenues that's certainly going to suffer as well.
The unemployment benefit supplement that you've referenced, that's that $600 a week extra that ended July 31st. That seems to me to be on the chopping block in Congress, at least for Republicans. The argument is that it's too much money, disincentivizes a worker from going back to work. True or false?
So I think every one of us has probably heard at least one anecdote, if not multiple anecdotes of people saying, oh, well, I'm not getting people to work, or people saying they will not go back to work because the unemployment boost is a better financial deal for them than going back to work. And for a long time, all we had was to deal with just look at the anecdotes. But in the last month, at least in July, we've seen several studies come out that indicate that on aggregate, the unemployment boost, the $600 per week additional unemployment boost, has not been a work disincentive. In fact, of all the people that went back to work in May and in June, 70% of them were on unemployment benefits, making more on unemployment benefits than they made at their jobs that they returned to in May and June. And I think, when you consider why workers might go back to work and give up their unemployment boost, there are a couple of reasons. One is because if your employer calls you back and you refuse to go, in most cases, your unemployment benefits get cut off. Secondly, even if there are, some exceptions around there, workers would rather have the permanence of a job than the temporary benefit of an unemployment benefit that they know will expire at some point. Now, I think most people were not expecting it to expire in the last week of July and thought that it would last longer, but it has expired in the last week of July. And as a result, workers, when they're making longer-term decisions, know that at some point their unemployment benefits will be cut off, even if it wasn't going to be the end of July. And that when they have to return to the workforce, they're not going to return to a workforce that looked like it was in February with a really low unemployment rate and a lot of competition for jobs. Whenever we do get back all the workers to the workforce, or try to get as many workers to the workforce, our employment rate is not going to get back to those record lows until 2021, late 2021, or maybe even 2022. So workers are going to come back to a much more difficult job market. So they would rather take the permanence of a job than the temporary, boost of $600 per week in unemployment benefits. So, what we've seen repeatedly from different studies, at least on aggregate, is that people are not using the $600 per week unemployment benefit as a disincentive to work. When they are called back, largely they are going back. And at the end of the day, the reason why the unemployment rate is as high as it is to this day is because there simply aren't jobs coming back. We've lost millions of jobs. We've made back a small portion of them, again, in large part because of the PPP loans, a lot of which expires again in the end of July or in a couple of weeks. And those workers are coming back off companies' payrolls. So the unemployment rate is probably going to tick up some more. And all of that is going to be in sort of this environment where there's uncertainty about where our employment benefits are going. Congress obviously knew that the deadline was the end of July. They set that deadline in March. And so they've had time to deal with it. State unemployment systems are clearly not nimble, they're archaic. So even if Congress today decided to extend unemployment benefits, it'll be a week or more before they can actually extend those unemployment benefits. And a 1 month cutoff in unemployment benefits will reduce the size of the U.S. economy by about 4.3%, at least the consumer side of it, which would equal the entire decline in consumption spending during the last recession. So that's how significant the unemployment boost has been for the economy. And given that we're now 2 weeks into cuts in some households, even if Congress agreed today, it would still be 3 weeks. That's close to 1 month. So we've, in a way, inflicted pain upon ourselves by letting the unemployment boost lapse for as long as it has so far.
He's Mervin Jebaraj, economist with the University of Arkansas Walton College of Business. Thanks, Mervin.
Thank you.